Earlier on Friday, Commissioner Adam Silver made it clear on ESPN Radio that he wants to make the play-in tournament, which concluded Friday evening, a permanent fixture in the league. So the tournament itself, the Celtics and Wizards wrapped up the 7th and 8th seeds in the East. That's where they were seeded going into the play-in, so no changes there. And then the Lakers and surprisingly the Grizzlies wrapped up 7-8 in the West. So a little bit of a shake-up there. The Grizzlies were 9, they moved into 8. So with the tournament now behind us, you guys' thoughts on the tournament itself? Do you think it was a success? Should the league make it a permanent fixture, as Adam Silver is saying? So Quiggs, I'll start off with you.
So my original thoughts on this play-in tournament for this season, when I heard that they were going to carry it over, was that it's, some stupid, artificial, dumb carryover rule from a COVID shortened regular season that actually necessitated it. This season wasn't, I guess, shortened by 10 games, but it's not like the regular season was just stopped in the middle of the end of it, like the run up to the playoffs where games matter more than they ever do. So I thought it was just kind of weird that they were keeping it because it easily, it's easily dismissed as sort of like a playoff expansion to get more games, lucrative TV contracts, corporate greed stuff that other leagues are kind of exploring, like the NFL and the MLB last year with that 16 team mess that the playoffs were.
That'll return.
But it did do a decent job of making late regular season games matter much more this season. A lot of games like down the stretch, it carried so much weight, not necessarily for the Celtics, but especially with the Pacers, Wizards, and Hornets. The Wizards just, ended the season really strong. And for that reason, they're the 8th seed in the East. So in that sense, it really does, help the meaningful basketball side of things when it comes to, the dog days of the regular season. And it also kind of gives the entire regular season more weight by, only granting safety to the top 6 teams in each conference, which I like because, you have teams that are just, caring more about a regular season that at times in the past has been dismissed as, a warm up for the playoffs. And that Lakers Warriors game was an absolute playoff classic. And I'm thankful we got to see it play out, especially, that LeBron gets smacked in the face by Draymond Green and then ends up hitting, the middle rim from what his vision was telling him on that, game-winning shot with 50 seconds to go. So I came around on it and I really like it now. I think it's an interesting way to make the playoffs a little bit, it's better where the 1 seed isn't guaranteed the same thing as an 8 seed. There's difference between, being the top team in your league and just being like the team that just snuck in, because now you have to do more than just sneak in. So from that point of view, I think it's good. And honestly, like in the vein of, playoff expansion, it's not really much of an expansion. It's kind of just, more of like in some ways, like a step to get to the playoffs. Like it's not expanding. It's not making more bad teams get into the playoffs. It's making those bad teams really have to earn it. So I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to stay. I think money is kind of the biggest thing. And that's, I think, all these sports, it's all expanding because of money. And, obviously with more like the Lakers Warriors game, that's, going to be now, I think going forward, now the NBA is like, oh, you want to pay for this game that, could be a classic, have it on ESPN or whatever. So it's another game for networks having to pay for, another 4 games, I guess, for networks having to pay for. And obviously, it's still a business and that's going to give you a lot of money, but I think it's actually a good idea to expand the playoffs. It's not like baseball where they just expanded it and it's kind of that, or maybe football where they're expanding the season and they expand the playoffs. But, I think it also, it's important, obviously, for the last 2 teams in, they get a chance, and it obviously expands the play-in, I guess. But, as you were saying, it's technically not the playoffs. I think that's interesting, but I think it adds incentive to those 5 and 6 seeds so much, because I think, before it was those 8 seeds, and like if you were in the 6th seed, a lot of, you would maybe sit your starters, play them for matchups so you get the right team you want. But really, besides that, nothing much between, the 5, 6, or 7. You don't have home field advantage. Like, it kind of is what it is. But now the 5 and 6 seed are, obviously you're going to have to play for those. We saw it with the Knicks. We saw it with the Heat, and like all those teams, the Hawks as well. Like, they were playing hard down the stretch because they wanted, safety in the playoffs in those top 6 seeds. And I think that's maybe where you feel it most, because I think everyone in the 1 through 3, seeds are usually playing for that top seed or, for that type of stuff, then, the 3, 4, 5, they're always playing to get home field advantage. And then it's always like, what do we do with the rest of the teams? And now you give them incentives to not make the play-in tournament. So should be less, obviously everyone's the load management that's going to be there in the NBA, but I think it gives everyone an incentive to play, which you get good games in the regular season. And then hopefully you get some more classics like we saw, in the play-in tournament. And it's actually a really, really smart idea. And the only thing I'd probably add a caveat with like a games back thing like they did last year, but if you can like combine the two some way, I bet NBA can definitely do that. I think it'd be a really, smart decision.
Yeah, I would say that, well, first off, my biggest problem with the NBA has always been that the regular season means nothing. And you guys kind of mentioned this already. It's just like, I really think it is a warm up, because at the end of the day, the teams that people predict to make the playoffs at the beginning make the playoffs. And, that's when things really matter. And it's just the games are very monotonous at times, and the lack of defense. And, I enjoy the NBA, but also like I said, I just don't find that the regular season games hold a lot of weight. So I think the first thing the play-in tournament does is that it helps kind of, like Quig said, as down the stretch, more teams are invested. It's keeping the regular season a little bit more meaningful, which is great. Also, it keeps fans invested. Like if you were a fan a couple of years ago, if you're a fan of the Grizzlies, you're probably like, oh, we're not making the playoffs. I'm not going to watch. Now you're the 8th seed because of the play-in tournament, which is great. So it's a huge benefit. And so I think overall, and I do also agree that Warriors-Lakers game was super exciting. It was actually the highest rated game for the NBA for the entire season. So that kind of shows that this works, and it meets the NBA's goal of, eyes on the game and money and all that. I would say that keep the tournament. My other problem is though, the fact is now that, before the play-in tournament, you had already more than half the league was making the playoffs, 16 out of 30. Now you're having 2/3 of the league essentially make the playoffs. Does that make the games more meaningful in a sense? Yeah. Does it keep people more invested? Yeah. But like, in a way, wouldn't the regular season be even more meaningful if less teams made the playoffs? Because then you really have to try, So like down the stretch, does it help with the play-in? Yes, but overall, my biggest thing is we have to do something. The league has to do something that makes those games. I know the season was different this year because of start time, but make those games in like February really important, or those December games really matter. Like it just, and baseball is going to have this problem too. So I look, it was very exciting. I think it's a good thing to keep, but I just question, is this really going to do fix the main issue, which is, there's honestly too many teams make the playoffs, and the regular season is just not as important. But